metaphysics. And this broad vision of the human is not at all in conflict with the idea that human beings are rational animals. Don't confuse emotion with irrationality. Don't confuse social with a certain sense of submission to the status quo without individuality. Don't confuse historical as conservatism or as reactionary. And don't concern politics as simply paternalistic authoritarian, or metaphysics as philosophical, which is no relevant to our life here. Because this conception is a much more sophisticated notion about human rationality, about human beings as workers, as human beings as proficient linguistic beings. It's a complex system. It's compassed out. You say it's integrating a number of things, but each of them is important. You cannot simply choose one at the expense of the other. We need to be able to do that as a whole. This relates to the importance of the dialogue. The dialogue, which is a way of learning to be human from the Confucian point of view, as some of you know, that recently Amartya Singh published a book called Argumentative Indian. And I think if I were to do something of this nature, I would call it dialogical Chinese. Not argumentative, not dialectic, but dialogical. Sometimes conversation, just to talk. In Chinese, we talk about heaven, which means no relevance to the world here and now. But talking itself is a liberating experience. It can help you to find satisfaction of yourself and satisfaction of others. So the dialogue is not intended to convert. Conversion is not the purpose. The Confucians want to convert the Buddhists to become Confucians, or the Taoists want to convert Confucians into Taoists. Of course, you have conflict, you have ideas, different worldview, but conversion is not part of the reason. That's the reason why these societies very much shaped by Confucian ethos turn out to be very tolerant in the religious sense. We have 3 teachings in China. Now I'm advocating 3 teachings of the Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. I've been advocating 5 religions, 5 teachings, including Christianity and Islam. These are part of the Chinese landscape. That's true with Korea. Right now, 30% of Koreans are Christian, maybe 40 or 50% of Koreans are Buddhists. And when they are Christians and Buddhists, they're also, in terms of their behavior, Confucian in terms of ethical orientation. Reichauer, a great scholar in Japanese studies, once made the observation about Japanese. He said, maybe there's 70 or so Japanese who believe in Shintoism, or find the Shinto tradition as congenial to their way of life. But maybe 75% of the Japanese are very Buddhistic. And when they're Shintoists, they're Buddhists, none of them would turn their back on Confucian ethics. It's difficult to imagine that in a monotheistic tradition. The tolerance, important not for the sake of convergence. Also, it is not an occasion to state your conviction, almost to get a platform, like I'm privileged to have. But if you're involved in a dialogue, you're not going to impose a statement to your dialogical partner. That's not the purpose. Nor it's the occasion for you to correct the misunderstanding of someone else about you. Of course, we need to do that all the time. Someone misunderstands me. Let's have a dialogue. Let me explain. But that's not the spirit of dialogue. That's the spirit of trying to explain why you're misunderstood, and that kind of misunderstanding is unjustified. So what is the purpose of dialogue? It's not to convert, it's not to make a statement, it's not even to correct a misunderstanding. So the first purpose of dialogue is to cultivate the art of listening. The art of listening is extremely difficult to cultivate. Right now, I think some of the colleagues use the word deep listening. And some of you are engaged in deep listening, but most of you are engaged in superficial listening. because the idea is maybe 50 or 60% of knowledge a Harvard undergraduate obtains are gone just on the date of the graduation. That's one of the reasons we're not going to talk about the subjects of moral reasoning. We're talking about method. You will be able to reason morally, including the idea of justice, one of those popular courses like Sandel. Justice, sometimes more than 1,000 people take it. Once in the presence of the president, the question was asked, Professor Sandel, if you're totally frank, do you think your course on justice has such an impact on the students they're somewhat transformed? And he said, frankly, no. But there's a difference. What is the difference? Before they take the course, they're all relativists. They're so open. The liberal mind, the open mind, don't criticize anyone, to accept all kinds of things. Your way is okay, my way is okay. Let's be friends without converting each other. After they've taken the course, they are still relativists. But they know why they are relativists. In other words, they've become more conscientious, more concerned about their moral stance. This course may have a different effect. I don't know what. But anyway, this notion about listening, deep listening, is an art. You have to cultivate it. Sometimes even listening to your inner voice is not that easy. The second one is dialogue is a great opportunity for you to extend your intellectual horizon. You never confronted this kind of idea. When, let's say, when a Christian engaged in a true dialogue with a Buddhist, it's not a no-win situation. It's a win-win situation. It's a dialogue. The Buddhists will have a better understanding of Buddhism in the broader context. That's true with Christianity as well. That's the reason why, if you now read the newspaper, the word dialogue happens all the time. And why a few years ago, like 1993, when Sam Huntington talked about the clash of civilizations, for about 5 or 10 years, the clash of civilization featured most prominently. I've been arguing since the 80s about the importance of dialogue. Right now, many users of the dialogue are abusive users. Let's have a dialogue on American trade agreement with China. Let's have a bargaining, let's have a dialogue in Copenhagen about who's going to emit more poisonous gas without paying for that. It's basically a question about bargaining. The success, for example, China became very, very, these negotiators became celebrated like heroes because China doesn't have to pay, and China doesn't want, is successful, not allowing any country to measure the kind of emission that China may commit itself to. This is not dialogue, this is an argument. But in the interreligious or intercivilizational cases, there are many dialogues. But the real dialogue happens very rarely, often between two friends. But extending horizon is a very important feature. You have to confront someone or some idea that's radically different. Otherwise, your horizon will not be greatly expanded. And the third one, not only to cultivate the art of listening, to extend your horizon, but it also to enhance your self-reflexivity. You become critical of the most of things you learn. And when you become critical, the learning is no longer passive acceptance. Learning is not internalization of skills. Learning is not the acquisition of knowledge. Learning is character building. And character building is something that no one else can do it for you. Therefore, it's for the sake of the self. You can say, look, if I'm able to help other people, not simply for myself, this should be considered as virtue. It's altruism. But from the